Hello, my dears. Daniela here, and welcome to another episode of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. Today, I have a special guest who is someone that I'm now proud to call a friend of mine, Miss Stephanie Laynes. So if you specialize in waxing, I'm sure you guys already know who she is, but if not, let me just give you a brief bio. So Stephanie's been a licensed esthetician for over 16 years. She is the creator of Say Brazil Waxes, Say Skin Botanical Skincare, and the owner of Smooth Skin Supply. She has traveled all across the US and Canada and Australia with her 7-minute Brazilian wax technique. Oh my gosh, who doesn't want a 7-minute Brazilian? Yes, please. Training licensed estheticians for over 10 years. So in January of 2019, she debuted her highly anticipated Say Skin Botanical Skincare line that she created for her daughter who suffers with eczema. So when I was asking Stephanie to do this interview before, we were talking a little bit before the call, and I said, let's just go for it. Let's just have a conversation. You know, she and we learned had a lot in common at the Beauty Business Summit. So she grew up in a military family. Both of her parents were active duty. I am a military spouse. We just had a lot of things in common that I had no idea. I knew who she was, but I had never really had a conversation with her. But we really connected on a lot of things. And her husband's German, my husband's German. So there was just a lot of fun things that I was like, but our conversation really went all over the place, but there are some awesome key points in there. One of my favorite parts was when we were really talking about what it means to make your client feel comfortable when receiving a Brazilian wax treatment. And I'm talking about the comfort level for that client who is in a vulnerable situation. It's not comfortable for most women to be in the positions that you need to be in on the table when you're getting a Brazilian wax treatment and have someone other than your partner like that close to that area. So she gave some good tips, and that was, I think, a really important part of our conversation. Plus, Stephanie gave some really great behind the scenes stories about her path. So she has a really interesting path, starting from a soloist, or actually starting from working at a chain salon, then going solo, and her whole transition into now being a product creator. So I truly hope that you enjoy this episode and find some pearls of wisdom that will help you to grow your business. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and play that interview. All right, Miss Stephanie Laynes, welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast.
Thank you for having me and inviting me.
I kind of feel like you are the woman that needs no introduction, but for our listeners who don't yet know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about just your background and kind of what you do?
Yes. So my name is Stephanie Laynes. I've been an esthetician 16 years. It'll be 17 years next year. Oh my gosh. I never thought I would ever say that. I have kind of morphed into a jack of all trades. I stopped working in the room about 3 years ago, which was the time that I moved to Dallas. And I've really focused 100% on my company, which is Smooth Skin Supply. We are a wholesale distributor. I created a wax brand named Say Brazil. I created the 7-minute Brazilian. So I pretty much have focused 100% on that. And then this year I just launched a new line for eczema for my daughter. So I do that, and then online training. I have an online YouTube. I have video jokes that I kind of about.
I think that's how I first found you years ago. You had all these funny videos about Brazilian waxing and like things that are said in the room, and I was like, who is this lady?
Yeah, yeah. And they're still going. I mean, I posted those probably maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and I still get people that come and saying, I love those. And I'm like, I haven't done one in a while. I may have to pull that back out. But, it happens. We just don't talk about it. It's so real.
You know, you do. The first time we met in person was at the Beauty Business Summit.
Yes.
And so I obviously knew who you were, but I hadn't like had a conversation with you. And you're such a great speaker.
Thank you.
You have a talent of being able to provide value, but do it in such an entertaining way.
I try.
You know, I always feel like I'm the most boring speaker because I'm like, let's talk about the numbers and like all the.
I was in it. I had my little notepad out. I was like, oh my good. Oh yeah. Oh yes. I mean, you were definitely.
You know, the topics that I get super passionate about are like the not sexy topics. So
right.
I was laughing so hard at your presentation, but it also like you made such a great point about the thing that stuck with me really was you were saying like, if you've got the form and you're asking them, how do you want to follow up? Then follow up with them that way. You know, I was like, that is such common sense. And it's such like just a thing that's not done. It's like we do all the things on the form, but we're going to use, text message because that's what works best for us. So anyway, after that talk, I was like, oh man, I've got to get this girl on, on the show. But it was really something that you did that I think is incredibly smart. And I often preach this to our listeners is finding a niche.
Yeah.
And you started, your niche is obviously waxing. That has been your passion. But even when you were telling on the stage that when you started out, you had one facial, a $200 facial.
Yep.
And that was it. So it was, this is what I'm going to do. And if you want to see me and it was really your competitive advantage.
Yep.
So how long did that take? Like, how did you come up with that? And how long did it take you to get busy?
So when I started, I went from a corporate job to saying I wanted to go into aesthetics. It really did not, it was not my life path. So I went to college. My degree is in kinesiology. I focused on the science track. I was going to actually do physical therapy, really go that route. And when I graduated, I wasn't really into going into graduate school for that. Like I was like, I'm done with school. I'm kind of tired. So I went out and really got all these jobs pretty much in fitness, which is what I really did. I got a scholarship in basketball. So I've always been very, very active. And I was working at the time for the city. I was a rec supervisor and I did aerobic classes, probably like 8 to 10 a week in Berkeley. I worked at the Y and I worked at Cal Berkeley. And this girl that I got great friends with was like, your skin is so horrible. You're so beautiful. I really wish she would go to someone.
Some tough love right there. You're like, thank you.
I'm like, how do I even say that? She was like, I've been wanting to say that to you and I couldn't figure out how. And I just think you're so beautiful, but your skin can need some help. And like, that was like the second dagger, right? After the first dagger, it was the second one. And I'm like, oh. And she's like, I have a lady, go to her. And so I started seeing her. I was fascinated by her. She's still working now. She's a nurse. She had all these rooms. And fast forward, I worked in the daytime. I went to school at night. And I just really got passionate. So I stopped my full-time $80,000 job and just jumped headfirst into aesthetics. So crazy, right? My parents were like, oh my God, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? Are you having a crisis? Like, how can we help you? And I'm like, I really want to do this. I think I can do it. So I worked for a company. And at that time, it was called Pure Beauty, which is now morphed into Ulta. Same concept. You could go in and buy hair, skin, and nails. And then they also had a salon attached to it, hair, skin, and nails. And I was there and I worked in the city and I made really, 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 really good money. I worked 4 days a week. I brought home between $2,000 to $3,000 a week. So I made really, really crazy money. And I was like, okay, I retail really well. So can I get a piece of that pie too? And they were like, nope. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just part ways.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
And I went on my own and I was a rep for a little bit, but I always wanted to kind of own my own. I partnered with a doctor. He was amazing. He was an OBG, but he was a specialist. So women who either couldn't conceive or they just bled for no reason. That's who he worked with. He gave me a whole wing in his office. So I had my own treatment rooms, my own
So
nice waiting
let
area.
me pause you real quick.
Sure.
Were you focused on waxing at this point, or
No,
was
I wasn't.
okay? So this was just skincare.
This was just skin.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is perfect. Women have hormonal issues. I mean, it was perfect, perfect. About that time, it was 2004, 2005, the economy changed. That was like our little recession. And that's when I really started looking at waxing. I was not good at waxing when I started. I didn't want to wax, to be honest. I was a facial esthetician. I wanted to change lives. I wanted to do what I had happen to me with my skin and really just kind of give my story and really build my clientele. Not necessarily acne, but just basic things like, how to cleanse your face, how to take care of it. What happens when you get this kind of blemish? More so.
I think waxing can change lives too.
No, it can.
I mean, you're talking to someone who's half Greek, half Italian.
Yes.
Like, we are hairy people.
Yes.
And my poor daughter is like covered in hair. I'm like, it's okay, honey. Your mama's in the right industry. We'll get that all taken care of. Like,
oh, bless her heart.
But it really can, because it affects your self-confidence. If you have, I've done laser hair removal everywhere, but like your arms, I mean, there's so many. I remember just feeling like an animal, because it was just covered in hair. So it really can be life-changing.
And it can. I didn't like it, to be honest. I just didn't want to do it. I think part of it was because I was the test dummy in school. So I had that experience where I was waxed and I didn't like it. It wasn't in my, I would say, just my thought pattern. It didn't really dawn on me until I started understanding the numbers of waxing. Mm-hmm. And the little investment with a huge return.
No, you're speaking my love language, girl.
Yeah, the good ones do really well.
Yeah.
And so I started telling myself, in order for me to offer this, I'm going to really have to practice. So then Craigslist wasn't what it is now. I put an ad out on Craigslist once a month, and I did free. It was called Brazilian Fridays, and I did that for about 3 years, where I would come and have every single person that came into me. I've never seen them before. I booked them out 30 minutes, and I had to get done with their Brazilian men and women in 30 minutes. And if I couldn't finish, then they had to go. Like, I gave myself such a strict, and I'm military made. So both of my parents are military. So very specific, instructions.
Got it. Totally, totally feeling you.
And it worked. Like, I really started understanding why it was so specific and how to become routine. And I think even now when I talk to estheticians, they're so worried about the pain factor, or is the client comfortable, or, things that, in my opinion, aren't that important. My thing is that I don't want you to feel uncomfortable for an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's not focused. It's more people come in saying, I want to be meticulous. Clients complain about hair, and it's like, hair is a beast. Hair grows, and it grows in multiple different ways, multiple different patterns, multiple different stimulations. So if you don't explain that, then they're not going to get the understanding that not all the hair is supposed to come out after the first time. And tweezing does not help. So when I really started getting great at it, I actually had gotten pregnant. And, that's what happens when you work at an OBG,
Which can also make it a little bit awkward once you start getting bigger.
Yes.
To bend over, or bend in the, and the feet,
the nose and the neck and the sweating. So I had my hair on top of my head. I wore like wife beaters and tennis shoes, and I had like a smock on, and I worked all the way up until I had my daughter. So they actually induced me. I was 2 weeks late. So I literally worked that Friday, and they induced me the next day.
Wow.
So it was, for me, it was like, okay, it's such a simple thing to do, but it's not really that simple if you don't know what you're doing. Waxing is definitely an art. And I think it's an art that people either love it or they hate it. And
I'm a terrible waxer. I never was a good I'm amazing at laser hair removal, but if you like, waxing has never been something that I've been good at ever.
I wasn't. And I've done laser. So I've actually done pretty much every hair removal type except for electrolysis. And I wanted to do that on purpose to understand how it felt. I wanted to be in that client position to see what it was. And laser.
Can I just ask you your professional opinion as a wax expert, and now as a wax brand creator and trainer and marketer and all this kind of stuff? Should you use hard wax or soft wax? Because I hear this debate all the time and I have no idea because I'm like, you guys, I have no idea. Just give me a laser and I'll take care of it. But like with wax, no idea.
Honestly, it's preference of the operator. There's some great soft waxes. I have some amazing soft waxes. I'm a soft waxer by preference.
Okay.
Regardless of the way it works, if that makes sense. I didn't learn hard waxing until I actually created my waxes, which is kind of different. I has always been a soft wax. It's very instant. You put it on, you take it off. Hard wax, to me, majority of them are polymer based, which is plastic. So if there's a little bit of water on your skin, it doesn't stick. If you're sweating, it doesn't stick. If there's too much oil, like there's too many things on why it wouldn't work right. Soft wax, it would always do what I wanted it to do. I started going to hard wax, especially in the Brazilians, because I had a lady who just had really, really long labia. And she was like, I told her, I said, and she was young. And that's the part that I think kind of threw me a little bit. She'd only had one child. And I'm like, she's like, yeah. She's like, you're the only person that sees me besides my husband. She's like, so have you seen this?
It's something that's incredible to me that I always tried to make women feel comfortable is like, women's anatomies, there's so many different ways that they look and people get or they feel uncomfortable about, especially after they've had children.
Yes.
And it's like, I can't tell you how many conversations I had about, because when I was still doing treatments, Thermiva, Diva, all of these vaginal rejuvenation, non-surgical devices were not available. So the only thing that you had was vaginal rejuvenation surgery.
Right.
And so you're
right.
Yeah. So you're talking about that, but it's like that it's this huge topic that women are uncomfortable to talk about. And the thing is, like, when I would do laser hair removal, I'm like, to me, it's just like looking at an elbow. Like I've seen 100. So it's not like, way more than 100 actually, but like, it's not something that you think about. And I think that that's really important as a provider, as far as making the person feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
It's not about like, is there a pillow under them or is there, it's like, let them just feel comfortable in their own skin and know that they are perfect as they are. And it doesn't matter like what their, vaginal area looks like. And
that's the thing. I think for me with her and we were friends and she was just like, I've never had an opportunity to speak with anyone about it. Because when I would go to my OB/GYN, they're not there to talk about skin. They're making sure everything is correct. It's 10 minutes maybe with the doctor once a year. And I was like, I'm an open book. I can be a little candid too. So I'm cool. And she's like, well, I've really thought about getting labiaplasty. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, what do you think? And I said, in my opinion, the skin is just not retracting back. Mm-hmm. So it is where it is. Like it's not going to go anywhere. And as we get older and we go through our menopause and our change, you're going to see it become even looser because that's what happens to the skin.
Right.
Like, oh. So even there, I said, everywhere, honey.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I'm going to make an appointment. And I was like, I'm using hard wax on you because, we're delicate. So to get into those folds with soft wax was just not working. And that's really when I started changing the way I waxed. Because everyone is different, but it was really more her because I really just had to take my time. 7-minute Brazilian, the way I got it down so fast is that I always do the same thing over and over. So it doesn't matter if it's male or female. I start and end the same. I wax. I do 2 applications on the top. I remove. I go. And with her, I couldn't get into that zone because I really had to slow down on that labia. And I really had to be very meticulous, which means I'm bringing light down, which means I'm bringing the mad light in because there's folds that I couldn't see with my own eye. And she did. She finally got labiaplasty and she was so happy. She's like, okay, so here's the deal. I'm 6 weeks post-surgery, but the stitches are still there and I have so much hair. Will you wax me? Are you sure? I'm like, no, get a doctor's note. She's like, fine. She got a doctor's note. She came back. He's like, yep, it's all good. I'm like, but can you see the stitches? She said, yep, they're blue. You'll see them. Okay. So we went in. I got right to the end, working on that labia, that last little pop. Both stitches at the top said, boop.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, she's like, don't worry about it. It's fine. They're going to cut them out tomorrow. Okay. She's like, I love it. I said, I want to see this heal. So I'm all now like intrigued, right? Because I've never understood what labiaplasty is. I never looked it up until I met her. And I'm like, this is really interesting. And she's like, right?
Yeah, so once a week I work at Potomac Medical Aesthetics. I like to just kind of keep my hand in things,
Oh,
and
look at you.
yeah, and we do the P shot and the O shot, which is
Okay.
actually using PRP
Yes.
and injecting either into the penis, the P
Yes.
shot for erectile dysfunction, or into the clitoris for helps with lubrication. It helps with
Yes.
orgasm.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if it's FDA approved, but it is meant to help with incontinence.
Yes.
And which is a big thing. That's another big thing for
Yes.
moms.
Absolutely.
Because it's much more, a lot of these procedures are marketed as this like sexual thing, like have a better orgasm, but it's really like quality of life. Like,
Absolutely.
can you stop peeing every time you sneeze, or can you know what I mean? Like those or can you feel comfortable?
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, we're kind of digressing, but
that's not really talked about. Like that was my whole thing, especially working with the OBG and understanding, he worked a lot with prolapsed uterus, prolapsed bladders. He did really pretty much the last result was surgery for him. He really wanted to do kind of the dial in, which was beyond just the Kegels. Like, there's all kinds of different mechanisms that they can do. And he was just like, he was talking to me because he would do ultrasounds for me every week. And he's like, let's just see Celine, because I knew her name was Celine. And I'm just like, how common is these prolapses? He said, I actually see quite a bit. Mm. Oh, okay. So I should ask for a C-section. He said, you may not get it, but it'll help. And once I started understanding that, and then when I started waxing even more women, and the thing is too, I think there's a whole myth saying that only young people get Brazilians. Really not. I mean, I've waxed a lady who was in her 80s. She had never had one before. And she's like, my husband has passed away. I'm just kind of being free. And I was like, hey, absolutely. Let's get this done. And it's just really interesting talking to other women about anatomy. Because as a waxer, there's a lot of things that I see. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that women don't kind of understand about their own bodies, which I find very fascinating, but yet frustrating at the same time. From cleansing to understanding, that there's 3 holes and not 1. And, all of these things that you wouldn't never think as a waxer and as esthetician, you would have to explain to a woman to say, you can't use Dawn soap here.
Yes.
You can't use a Brillo pad here. Like there's still toilet paper here. Mm-hmm. And really get to the understanding that women they don't really understand. They don't really know. And I really kind of put it under the umbrella as women's health. Like,
because I think it is a topic that's not really, it's people are not comfortable talking about it. And it's kind of like, religion, politics, money, vaginas.
And I find it really interesting, especially being on the creative side and creating so many products that are focused specifically in that area. When I talk with women about, especially estheticians, on how they have that discussion with their clients, it's really interesting because a lot of them are so fearful of the conversation or being rejected of the conversation. And I said, but here, wait, you're already there. Like
you're a professional, it can easily be talked about in a professional way, just like it's quality of life, it is quality of life 100%. And your client should be able to have that conversation with you, and you of all people who it's such a normalized thing for someone who sees that or works on that area of a woman on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And it's mind-boggling when you have people who are just, they don't really know, and it's funny, my mother is Southern Baptist, so very old school. Me, I'm pretty liberal. I'm pretty open. I just waxed Celine this past weekend with her bikini line, and she's just so over the top. I mean, honey, she's like a new little person. And she would go with me to my Brazilian wax services when I would get it done. And she was like, Mommy, I want to get that done. And my parents are like, you're scarring her. And I'm like, but it's my job. You cleaned teeth for years. You worked on airplanes. We visited you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, here's the thing with Celine. As long as you don't make a big deal of it, it's fine. I would be up there. The lady would be doing her thing and waxing me and everything. And Celine would look for a little bit and then go on about her business. It was really no big deal. But you have a lot of people who are so, they're, I wouldn't even say modest. I think it's just understanding, when I got lasered, and I did get lasered, I got lasered, I want to say probably total of 25 times, 20.
What kind of laser were they
Back
using?
then I was the test dummy. So it was all YAG. That was when
which is not comfortable.
No, YAG is not.
Yeah, it hurts a lot.
Not Palomar. Who was it? Oh God, I can't remember. But they came in and the doctor was so super excited because a lot of her Middle Eastern descent clients were really looking, because she was still trying to use a diode.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't doing anything.
Well, and it can burn this. So for those of you who are not familiar with lighter laser devices, on skin types 4 through 6 on the Fitzpatrick scale, you cannot use, so the traditional, the kind of gold standard in laser hair removal is an 810 pulse diode.
Yeah.
And so using that wavelength, the laser's targeting the pigment in the root of the hair. So the more contrast that you have between the skin and the actual hair, the better the treatment will be. Well, if you're a 4 through 6, there's pigment in your skin that is very close to the pigment in the hair. And so it can't target it. So with the ND YAG, that has a longer wavelength, but it is much more zappy. You need more treatments and it's not as effective.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's just for those of you who are not familiar with
the laser. Yeah. And no, it is. It was Candela. That's who it was.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were trying to sell the doctor. So, of course, I was like, oh, you need a model. Oh, yes,
Mm-hmm.
And the experience was really interesting because I really got to be on the other side of the table. Now, remember, I'm an esthetician. So my goal was not to go out and get laser hair unless I was in the environment. And she kept saying, she's like, you're not responding the way you should. Now, I just had my daughter. So that's the one thing I think I really should have paid attention to. Is I was a year postpartum, but I was still breastfeeding up until 9 months. So when I had my first laser done, it was about 3 months post pumping.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize the hormone imbalances with hair. And I told her, I said, I really wish I would have done this before and then started after to see the effects of the hair. Mm-hmm. Candela wasn't quite as advanced then. So I really didn't have the opportunity to get laser before I had her. But after having her and still breastfeeding for that time, so 9 months, even I pumped. So she took herself off the boob at 3 months. I pumped another 6. Mm-hmm. And so I was still, trying to hammer out that milk. And it was interesting just the responses my skin was having. Like the best place I response was actually my butt crack. Underarms, not so much. Front male, not so much. But my butt crack was amazing. And I'm like,
I wonder why.
I've never seen that. And I'm like, wow. And so the YAG, as you're right, is very painful. She had a full chiller. So we have the tube and, if your folks aren't familiar, but the tube with the ice. So I was able to shoot the ice cold air as she's zapping. But it was painful. It was definitely painful. And I haven't tried it since. So Selena's 13. So 12 years ago, I haven't tried laser again to see how
it's advanced quite a bit.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah, it has advanced quite a bit, but we still have a long ways to go for women of color. There's a lot of room for improvement in all the services and really the products that we're using as well. But luckily there's a focus on that. I'm seeing much more trends towards, even sunscreens, it's like, can we get a physical block that will work on a 4 through 6? Yes. That doesn't turn you like purple or blue, like that's, yeah. So anyway, let's go back to how the transition from getting out of the room.
Yeah.
Into really becoming what you are today and developing these different brands and moving into the education space and really helping so many waxers in our industry to build their business?
I actually was always teaching. I actually taught in beauty school. So when I was a senior, I would teach the freshmen. I've always taught. It's always kind of been there. When I moved back home right after Celine was born, I stayed with the doctor. He was an hour from where my parents were because I had moved home. I had divorced my husband at the time. And I didn't want to be away from her and be in an hour commute. So I really moved everything. And that's when I started working with the doctor as I was transitioning. So I opened a location in the same city my parents were in. And I got this beautiful location. I had 4 treatment rooms. I had full staff. I had admin staff. I had massage therapists, other estheticians. When I was working at the doctor, they were working there. So again, the economy changed, and it changes fast. You know, you got to be kind of ahead of it a little bit. And I realized that there wasn't anything up in my area for estheticians to actually buy on hand and be able to have. And so I started really small. I just carried basic things. I did 2x2s and 4x4s. I did waxing sticks and bonnets and, you know, all the things that we needed just to do aesthetics. And word had gotten out really easy. Now, this is way before Facebook. I'm starting to date myself now. So this is before Facebook was really popular. You know, MySpace was still around. You know, I would advertise on Craigslist that I had supplies if you were in the local area, and people would come. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. I changed 1 treatment room into my supply warehouse. Mm-hmm. And I was making more in that supply warehouse than I was daily. And really? I was like, okay, so let me just dabble. I don't want to do skincare because skincare is a little bit more of a sell. You got to sell people on skin. They got to be used to it. There's a relationship with skincare that I just don't have the patience for, right?
That's
not that I don't use it, but to sell it, you got to build that relationship, and it takes time. Waxing is very instant. You either need a soft or a hard. You need some sticks or some strips. It was really very much quick cash. So I started doing Serapil very in the beginning, and it was selling easy. And I'm like, okay, wow. And I wasn't doing classes at this time. My old distributor that I worked for at that time was California Skincare Supply, had always done her waxing classes. And I told her, I said, you know, I would love to do waxing classes here, advertise them with you, and have the wax available for them. She's like, sure, that's perfect. And so it kind of really morphed from there. The teaching was really easy. I had lots of people at that time. That was way before I put out my first DVD. I'm dating myself. And it became very easy to sell products and not have to worry about filling those rooms. Because as we know, you got to have your cost per service down. You got to understand how fast each room turns over, what's the income. And if the income changes, I have to be able to put something in to make it maintain for everything. Right. Mm-hmm. And, you know, at that time, my daughter was right before she started school, and my parents were like, you know, are you really wanting to do this, or are you really want to do skin? And I said, I love skin. I don't ever want to give that up in waxing, but this is really kind of taking off. There's nothing here. So maybe I should look into it a little more. The landlord at that time was trying to go up on his rent, which I just didn't agree with. And so I moved everything home. I went and rented a room in a tanning salon to keep my clients. And then I just moved the distribution into my dad's detached garage. And I set up a den, and I had, you know, everything on Vonage, which is all, you know, through the internet. And I had the computer set up, and I really maxed it out. At that time, Lori Nestori was looking for a distributor. So I came on with her. So all I did was wax and supplies. And I would hold classes. I would go and do at locations to different salons and spas. And I'm like, there's really something here. Okay. Now, here's the thing. When you start becoming a distributor and you start having to sell those products, they're going to tell you what they want you to say. Mm-hmm. And I'm very much a free spirit. I really like to say what I like to say. And I don't want to be told what to say. And
you want to share your own experience.
It did. And I felt that I was always bringing like my own experience to the sale versus me saying that this is a traditional blue wax. That I like to kind of bring my experience in waxing to not only selling to people, but just explaining to them how they can really benefit from using it and yield the results they needed to yield. And it became like a really tug of war with all of them. I don't like when you said that. I don't like hearing this. Someone said you said that. We didn't know you. And I finally just said, you know what? Instead of me having to kind of bend to everyone's rule, I'm I need to just do it myself. So I met this really amazing manufacturer at one of the trade shows, and we just really hit it off really, really well. And she's like, I would love for us to make wax for you. And I'm like, no. She's like, yeah. But why not? And I'm like, you could do that? She's like, absolutely. I'm like, I can make it like whatever I want. She said, whatever color you want, whatever you want in it. All you do is just tell me what you want. We'll go back and forth and you just say if it works or not. And I will tweak it until you like it. Okay. So I really just took everything that I liked from any line that I had already worked with and really tweaked it to myself. And that was all the way down to the ingredients, to the color, how much mica I wanted, how much microcrystalline I wanted, how much resin I wanted. Like really, this works, this doesn't work. Or I want it to be melting at a lower temp. Like I really, really focused everything on low temp, which is Brazil is an entire low temp wax brand. So it's not high heat at all. Mm-hmm. And when I started tweaking it, I really started saying to myself, imagine me having an entire line. I really just did wax in the beginning. I didn't have any pre and post. I didn't have anything. I just had wax. Like I was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on wax. And it really changed the way I looked at the aesthetics business because I'm a multiple stream income. I knew I could always have a cap. Like I could only see a certain amount of people in a day. Even if I cut it down to 30 minutes, I still was always going to have a cap. Mm-hmm. But how could I make money on a 24-hour clock and not a clock from when I walk into the room and when I walk out? Mm-hmm. And when the internet came out, that was back when Yahoo store. So I had a Yahoo store. I got my little Yahoo store and I took my little pictures and hobnobbed it and put it up there. And it just kind of morphed overnight. And I'm like,
you okay, so this money is on the internet?
Yeah, this is working over here. Like I don't physically even have to talk to anyone. I can send an email or they can ask me a question and I say, okay. And then they would buy it. And I'm like, okay. And the transition for me wasn't really that bad because I literally did both up in California. So I started the distribution in 2007 and then I moved, we moved here in 2016. So 9 years I had it in California. I still saw clients. I still saw them in the evenings. If Celine was dancing, I would always see them on the weekends. I really still had my hands on clients all the time. When I moved here in 2016 to Dallas, that's when I 100% really let go of seeing clients, only waxing people when I did training or if I'm at a trade show. And the transition really didn't hit me that hard because I had already been putting so much time into the distribution and time into making all of my products. And it's a process. I think that's the one thing that people don't quite understand. And I always say this example, when you're a creator and you're creating product, it's from raw materials. So it's time. And typically for me, a product can take 1 to 2 years to make it perfect before I'll beta test it. Mm-hmm. So I'll send out samples to people all over the US in different climates and different altitudes just to see not only how it transits, like what does it do when it gets there? Is it pushing out of the bottle or pushing out of the jar because the altitude affected it? But what is it like when it sits on a shelf for 2 to 3 weeks? What is it like when a client who waxes, nonstop versus one who only waxes maybe 2 or 3 times a day? And so I do a lot of beta testing. And a lot of people don't really kind of understand that part. They think that they just see a product one day and it's like, oh, this is new. No, it was like a 2-year product, process just for that one product. And when I was creating 7, which is my first soft wax, it went through about 9 generations, which means I would have it. I looked at it. I would play with it. Oh, it doesn't feel right. I would send it back. They would send me another one. And I would keep tweaking, in 9 times. That's just with one product. And I have 6 waxes. So then I moved that one. I liked it. And I moved on to another one. I wanted a cream wax. So we did the whole thing over again. So the product creation side really challenged me because I really had to get it right for me. And a lot of people will look at me and say, oh, you're a Black woman. Was it for coarse hair? No, I'm really about making it be effective for every hair type. So whether it's on, and the skin color doesn't really matter when you're waxing, it's really the hair type. What is the hair doing? How does the hair respond? And it really kind of opened my eyes to understand waxing in the US because waxing in other places is very different. And I've traveled. So when I've gone to Australia, it's very, very different.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And their licensing is very different as well. So beauty therapists are licensed in massage, nails, and skin. So when you're talking to them, you got to really have them focus and take the nails out and the massage out and give skin. When you go to Canada, it's 100% unregulated.
Great.
So
So I was familiar with Canada and with the UK, but I didn't know, and I know about Australia as well. I didn't know that waxing was different.
the approach, the understanding, and then also the accessibility. So Canada, which is very interesting, they're regulated very heavily about what comes in. But Australia, because they're an island, they don't get a lot of stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went, they were enamored. And it was like, oh, well, what waxes do you have? They're like, we only have 3. And I said, what? And I said, okay, got my stuff out. My cocoa is non-polymer, so no plastic, and very different in application, different in setup, different in time. The reason I went to no polymer is because I don't like plastic. And I'll explain it. So plastic is if you wax and you pull your hard wax out, when you have those strings, that's an indication that it's a plastic-based wax.
Mm-hmm.
Hard wax without that is very different, meaning it's temperamental. So you can't keep it on all day. It's like food. The longer you keep it on heat, the more it's going to separate and go back to its original form.
Mm-hmm.
So when I brought it over there, they were like, we've never seen this before. And I said, most people don't. Non-polymer is not a traditional wax. Plastic or polymer is traditional. When I show the 7-minute Brazilian, I show application. Even when people watch it, they're like, this is completely different. And I say, here's the thing. You want to know the wax is going to take the hair off. And that was really something that I was very passionate about. Not only is it compostable, so you can compost the wax once you're done because it'll completely break down. But the way it adheres to hair is very different because I only want to go to the labia one time. I can't go multiple times. That's how you start getting in tears and micro tears. So I really wanted to just do it one time. And so when I took it there, they were like, wow. And it really dawned on me, like we're so used to just grab a can of wax, it'll get it done. It'll get it done. Not every wax is the same. Mm-hmm. Really. But when you look at the hair type and you have certain hair types, and we all know Brazilians' hair is resistant. It's not meant to come off in that area. Mm-hmm. So the skin's going to hold on to it as much as you can. When you're able to manipulate that and really understand how the wax can wrap around the hair, and it's really wax and not plastic in the way, then whether the client's sweaty because they're nervous or you put too much oil on it, it doesn't really matter. And that's really where I, as a waxer, really evolved myself because I literally want to put it on and take it off. I want to always know it's going to take hair. No matter where I put it, it's always going to get hair. And most people don't think in that way. They're like, okay, if it gets it off, oh, that's good. If it doesn't, I'll touch it up. I'm not a touch-up person. I don't even tweeze post-wax. So if there's hair that are left behind, I need to take the wax and be able to get it. I'm not going to put tweezers to your skin. It's fresh. It's vulnerable. And so when people look at me and they're like, I don't tweeze anything. If you understand hair removal, then tweezing it is not going to get it done. I need to be able to have the wax be able to take it off. And that's kind of my philosophy, even when I was creating it, even when I was testing it on my skin. And my dad, who's very hairy, I would come and get him in, and he has a mixture of gray too. So I'd be like, oh yeah, let's get this going. And he was like, what is that? Oh, what is that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I don't like that.
It sounds like this is what happens when a perfectionist is creating a product. It's like 8 or 9 iterations of the product. But that's great. It's like perfectionists should be the ones that are creating their products because you want it to be, you don't want to just half-ass something that you're putting your name on and that you're promoting. So that's awesome to hear.
Absolutely.
So we just have a couple more minutes. So I want to just get, what would be your advice to the estheticians out there who are specializing in waxing?
Yeah.
Like give like your best piece of advice as someone who really is an expert in this area.
Always have a great wax warmer. Like that's the one thing I always say, never skimp on it. Don't buy something that's really cheap because your wax warmer will really make or break your business. So invest in a really good warmer, but always understand that, the better you are, the more comfortable you're with the wax, the more comfortable with your body language. What you say and not say can really affect clients. I love the fact that it's an instant gratification. but I also love educating people as well. So I'm really like, we can get this every time you come see me. You just got to keep your appointment, honey. Yes. Uh-huh. and it's for waxers, I find that, and I don't know what this phenomenon is of showing people's, vaginas with the hands over on social media. It's, to me, I don't understand how that really shows your skill. I would rather see the application and the removal than before with hair and after with hair. No hair.
Right.
Like, if you really want to be really, really good and you really want to showcase what you're doing, people want to see the application. And I think that's what's missed in a lot of social media. And I never see it. And I really, I repost as many people that tag us who are actually waxing and not showing just the hair there.
The before and afters.
Yeah. The application is important.
Mm-hmm.
I would also give the simple advice of don't forget retail. I think we miss out as waxers the retail opportunity because we don't equate it to skincare, but realizing the skin is one big organ. So just because you take the hair off doesn't mean that they don't need aftercare. A big passion of mine is really understanding what people do when they go home. How do people bathe? Do you ask those questions? Do you have
I 100, retail is like my thing. And
yes,
I'm always like to the waxers, do you carry dry brushes? Do you carry tweezers? Do you carry body scrubs, lotions, post-wax? Like everything that you can think of that would align with those, because that is, and even putting together like post-wax kits or having a higher price for their first treatment and including the kit. Like there's so many creative ways that you can boost that revenue per hour and make sure that your client is having a better service.
Absolutely. And that's the thing I think a lot of waxers miss out on. When they come into our store, I'm always talking to them, are you retailing? Oh, I can't afford it. And I'm going to say, I'm going to stop you because I have two products. One is $6. The other one is $3.
Mm-hmm.
So you can bump up your cost of your Brazilian and include the product.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very simple. You got to put something in someone's hand in order for them to use it. If they don't have it, you can't ask them. You got to kind of force their hand. And that's one thing about waxers that do really, really well is that they have something that walks away. They have things that are available on their shelf. The retail part is its own business under the hair removal. Like they work together. Mm-hmm. It's not one or the other. And I get a lot of waxers that say, well, I don't do facials or I don't do skincare. I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're dealing with skin when you're removing hair, honey.
Yeah.
It's together. And the retail portion, and just like you said, is so important to every business, whether you just do waxing or you do both skin and waxing. Your retail has to always be there. And I find that a lot of waxers I don't know if it's because there's a big fear behind it because they feel that they don't know what to say or what to do. But, dry brushes and tweezers are very simple. What people bathe with is very, very simple. And even asking them, because and that's how I got onto the whole Dawn situation with the client who was using Dawn soap. I was like, how do we even get there? How do we evolve from...
Right. Isn't that, that's a dish soap.
That's
right?
And the foaming dish soap, mind you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do we get to you making up one day and saying, I'm going to use some foaming Dawn soap?
Yeah.
In the nethers. Yeah. And she was like, I said, yeah. So we're going to take like all of that out. Cause you do know that like, there's like harsh ingredients in there and there's like this. And she was like, okay. And it wasn't where I made her feel embarrassed. I just had to figure out how did we get.
You got to have the pH conversation.
pH conversation is a conversation that I find a lot of women don't understand, but they'll use something in order to try to fix it, which is why the pH is off in the beginning. And I always say that. I said, the reason your pH is here and the reason you have a scent that you don't like is your body's telling you that something you're doing is not normal. Mm-hmm. And then it clicks. And I'm like, you don't have to use Summer's Eve. You don't have to use all of these nice scented, clear, nasty body gels there. It's not meant for that area. And I have clients that have used perfume in that area, that they spray the body sprays in that area. And then again, it goes back to understanding chemistry. Your body will tell you what it doesn't like. Mm-hmm. Your job is to listen and not ignore. So if you've been ignoring all this time, your body's going to keep getting louder. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, the louder. Yeah, loud. And then they're like, oh, I understand. And it's really kind of, for me, I try to always use myself in situations. And I always say, as estheticians, we're very close to you. Last thing I want to do is be offensive, whether it's my underarms or just myself in general. So I even take things to extreme on myself. And that usually gets people to kind of open up a little bit more than what I would have just said if here's a product.
Yeah.
It really gets the dialogue going. And then they're like, oh, okay. Because, my whole journey with natural deodorants has been a very interesting ride. And I created one, obviously, but people really don't understand deodorant either. And I'm like, you don't need all of that. You're supposed to sweat. And then they're like, oh, and then they use mine. They're like, oh, this is different. Yeah. Because I sweat. So if I sweat, I'm going to create something that helps me so that you understand, the bigger picture. And deodorant right now, I always put that under women health as well. There's a lot of information out about antiperspirants and aluminum and all the things that are getting stuck into the lymph underneath the arms. And, I always talk about
deodorant.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't really understand it. And we're so taught as young women to always put your deodorant. I remember my mom always say, go get your Mitchum. Mitchum that's the strong stuff. So you get in there and you're like, I'm a Mitchum. And it wasn't until I started getting older that I'm like, I don't really need the Mitchum. The Mitchum isn't allowing my body to do what it's supposed to do. So let me really, figure this out. And I'm going to date myself again. Dermalogica actually came out with a deodorant years ago. And that was really where I was first introduced to natural deodorant. It was phenomenal until it stopped working.
Yeah.
And then when it stopped, everybody knew it stopped. So that's what you had to be like, oh, I didn't reapply. I'm so sorry. I'm going to go ahead and just, take my elbows down. I'll be right back. So, the natural deodorant thing, I always put into the same category that I do Brazilian waxing. I put it really in that whole women's health thing because there's a lot of things that we don't discuss. There's a lot of people that love to get their underarms done, no different than, laser. Underarms was where I really went first. And, I didn't realize once the hair is gone and understanding that the sweating was normal. I thought I was sweating because the hair was there. So there's just a lot of things that, I have found in my journey of creating and providing education that there's just a lot of things that I think that are so common that aren't really that common for a lot of people. Right. And presenting it in a way that's very comfortable, that's, teaching, but also really educating and just saying, you don't always have to do what everyone else is saying to do, it's
there's more than one truth.
Yeah. And that's with my daughter as well. Like I'm even looking at her, like some of the things I have to break from the way I was raised because it's just what you do versus kind of thinking like, well, what if I take this and make this a little bit different? I wished I would have gotten waxed when I was 13, 14 years old. I wouldn't have no hair. I would be like, So when I started waxing her, she's all for it. She's laying there with her arms up and she puts her legs up and she's holding like she's seen me do all these years. And I'm just like, it can be that way if I change the verbiage, if I really am so totally cool with it and totally relaxed with it. And it
probably makes her more comfortable with her body too.
Absolutely. Oh, she's very comfortable. Very comfortable. Very comfortable.
Well,
very comfortable. And I like that because I remember I had that, that terrible 13, 14 kind of geeky kind of stage where I was just like, oh God. And I don't see her having that. And I think part of it is because I have really allowed her to just kind of be,
feel good in her own skin,
Absolutely.
Which is what, we should hope for all of our daughters,
I wish I had that. And that's the thing I always go back when I'm talking with her is kind of, especially with women's health, especially now in this day and age that there's so many things that, our government's trying to control. Is really understanding that it is you, this is your body. You have a say, you can do whatever you need. And creating things for her really kind of opened my eyes even more because with her eczema, she can never get a facial. She can never go to a spa. And I really had to be, I kind of had to get over it because I was very sad about that for a long time. Like I could never even physically give her a facial unless I really tweaked it because of her skin condition. And so it really got me thinking about people who do have eczema and what do? They don't come to us. They don't talk to us. Their relaxation and skin is not, parallel. So when I was creating for her and really putting her in this little bubble, and then my husband, I met him. And when he came into our little bubble, I was like, yeah, so you're not going to be bringing in Libra 2000. You're not bringing any bleach in here. You're not doing any of that. He's like, what? We have our little cocoon here. Mm-hmm. It's all nice and calm. We have really nice organic things. And he's like, but organic doesn't work. We're not going to do that here. So the Tide stays over there and the Libra 2000 stays over there. We talked to him. I actually did a live with him and he was explaining how he's actually come over to this side. So everything I've created for her in our house, Celine has eczema. So we all act like we have eczema. So we all use the same product. So there is no differential and she doesn't have to adjust to anything.
Yeah.
And so when he finally came on board, he's like, it's really not that bad. I didn't realize like really what I was doing. And I'm like, well, look at there. Imagine that. Like I wasn't just making it up. And he's like, no. So I did a little mini interview and he was talking about, yeah, I use a little balm. I have seborrheic dermatitis when I shave, and he's German. So he has that really just flaky dry when he shaves. He's old school. So he likes the Nevia, which is very prevalent in Germany. He's old school with the big, thick shaving cream. I mean, so when I'm watching, I'm always like, oh God, really? I mean, there's so many things. And he's like, no, I have my routine. And he shaves everything. So face, head, he's all bald and everything. And so when we started talking about Celine's eczema and I started looking, I said, I think you have a little bit of eczema, like you're flaking and it's very seasonal. And he's like, no. I said, well, we're going to give you a little bit of botanical balm. And that's for eczema. I said, I just need you to move it around a little bit. And he moved. He's like, this is really nice. I said, look at that. You're not flaking anymore. Oh my goodness.
Unbelievable.
And he's like, okay, I understand you now. Because for a while I didn't, but now I get it. And I'm like, see, look at how simple that is. And it's funny because, him being from Germany, very, very different background. Me and Celine having our little tribe for all this time and him coming in, he was just like, I've never seen anything like this. I said, Celine's eczema is very extreme. So if it's not under control, she goes to hypopigmentation onto her face. And that's how we know that it's getting worse, if that makes sense. And so I did a nice little diary where I chronicled every day, same time. I took a picture when she was having a flare up and it was about 20 days. And so you could see the pigment start to leave and then it leave and then it comes back. And so I showed him just scrolling on my phone and I'm like, this is why we have to have what we do in our home. He's like, I get it. I absolutely get it. And most people don't. And most estheticians don't. And that's one thing, as I've been educating on eczema since I still have my wax, but it's passion for me because I see my daughter as she's growing.
You have a personal story with it.
Absolutely. She wants to wear makeup. She's going through her hormones. Like all of these things I'm starting to see and been with her all these years. I'm really like tweaking a lot of stuff. Like, yeah, okay. So here, okay, this can be the barrier. Oh, we can't have makeup get through the barrier. That's a trigger. Environmental is a trigger. Hay fever is a trigger. I'm really starting to really work my way through it. But now that my husband has a form of eczema as well, I'm like, well, look at that.
Well, listen, I hate to cut you short, but you obviously have so much knowledge, so much information to share. So where can estheticians who want to stay in touch with you and learn more from you, where can they find you, follow you, and just kind of keep up with what's going on with you?
Absolutely. So Instagram, Facebook are both Stephanie Laynes, Twitter as well. And then my website is stephanielaynes.com. And so
we'll include all those links below the show notes so people can just easily click there. But you guys, Stephanie has so much information. She's such a great speaker, such a great educator. So be sure to, connect with her, keep up with what she's doing. If you have the opportunity to see her at a live event, absolutely do that. And Stephanie, thank you so, so much for your time.
Thank you.